Hello, everyone. On episode number 2, I'm talking with Carlos Flannery. Carlos is a guide on a bow hunting only ranch near Hondo, Texas, which is about an hour and a half or so west of San Antonio, called the Lee Ranch. Carlos has extensive experience with bow hunting and an incredible knowledge of the animal's terrain and the techniques used to hunt those animals. Not only is Carlos an outstanding bow hunter and guide, he's also a super nice guy. Hope y'all enjoy.
The Outside Within podcast.
The Outside Within podcast.
Now. All right, man. We're live. What's going on, Carlos? How you doing, bud?
I'm doing great. Another great day in South Texas, enjoying the weather. It's finally cooling down, so looking forward to the cold season ramping up. It's always good hunting when it gets cold.
Well, I appreciate you doing this, man. Let's start off by talking about a little bit of your history, how you got started in bow hunting and guiding.
Sure. Well, it was all karma, I believe. When I grew up, for some reason, I had this allure for animals and fauna and getting out in the woods and everything nature. And I've been shooting a bow since I was 12 years old, but I never had the ability really to go hunting. And for some reason, I just knew I wanted to go hunting. And my first game animal I wanted was either a javelina or a feral hog. But yet, I didn't have any friends or family or anyone that would really show me the ropes. So I knew as I got older, it was upon myself to get out there, expose myself to the outdoors, and do it. So it was a good 20 years ago. I started researching different bee leases that were around San Antonio, where I live currently, here in South Texas. And one of the first ones I found was Quattro Bee Ranch. Doug Bozeman owned it. It was a 500-acre high-fenced ranch with exotics and feral hog, white-tailed turkeys, you name it, was there. And so I thought, well, let's give this a shot. So I went to go hunt and instantly was addicted. I mean, just to get that animal within 20 yards and to see their eyes and their ears, and it's just such close range. I mean, your heart, your adrenaline's pumping. And, of course, to remember the discipline of everything bow hunters must go through as far as, your grip, your anchor point, seeing to repeat, relaxing, not jerking the shot. Just the skill level, that as bow hunters go through was just exhilarating, because I've shotgun before, and that's easy to shoot any deer or hog down a sendero, 300 yards, 200 yards, 150. But to have that animal there so close, it just really captured me. So I continued to hunt and hunt. I tried the Quattro, one of my favorites. I jumped around a couple of different day leases that I would research, but I kind of owed my allegiance to Quattro Bay. I really enjoyed it. The animals were always there. The owner was fantastic. The prices were good. And I kept coming back, and then shortly thereafter, about a year later, the owner came to me and said, Carlos, you're a pretty good kid. What do you think about guiding this ranch? And I thought, wow, what a big responsibility to kind of, oversee all the facets of a hunting ranch. So I thought, you know what, I can do this. I love this. This is kind of my thing. Let me get into it. So like anything I get into, I like to research and study and be the best at. So I'd spend time just to go up there, even when hunters weren't there, just to walk the woods, just to kind of watch the animals, to get out there, to understand the different patterning of these different animals, how they react, how they come together, how they don't come together, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
I had met you at Quattro B, and that's how we had met. And you weren't even my guide; you were just out there, hanging out. And the whole time I was like, man, I want this guy to take me around. Because I could see your excitement in it, and your dedication to the whole thing. You knew where the animals were, what they were doing. Hey, let's go check it out. Let's do a night walk. Let's go see if we can't find some at night. Stuff like that. When the other guides really weren't. Yeah, we'll take them whenever we're supposed to. But so, and that was what caught my eye towards you, is your devotion and your dedication to the whole thing. And I could see that from right away.
Absolutely. Well, as many hunters that are out there right now listening to us right now, They're different degrees of hunters and how much they put their energies, their efforts, their attention, and their money into what they pursue. And myself, it was something that was kind of ingrained in me. So at the Quattro, we had two different sets of guides. I was a fall and winter guide, and there was, of course, summer guides, Waco, that you came across. And so when it came to me, I wanted to put my hunters in the best situation possible. So I felt it as was owed to my hunters that I wanted to be the best guide I could be, because I expect the same. Like any person that spends their money, set aside work time, and expenses on travel, and of course paying for the hunt, I want to make sure they had the best chance possible. And nothing's ever guaranteed in hunting. Much like fishing, some days you have a great day, some days you don't. But if I could put that person in the best situation, and we got those target animals, in those frames of possible shots, then that made the hunt for me. And so just to kind of jump ahead just a little bit, so I became the guide. I spent 9 years at the Quattro guiding, which was a fabulous time. Met a lot of great hunters. I learned a lot. As a guide, as a person of nature, and as many of you hunters out there that are listening to this now, you constantly learn. The more exposure you have in the woods, the more knowledgeable you are. And no matter if you've been hunting for 10 years, 15, or 35, you see things in nature you've never seen. And it's up to you to constantly learn and perfect your art of your skill, whether it be a rifle hunter or a bow hunter. And so it was a great run. The owner just felt that at this time, about a year ago, he wanted to move on to new endeavors. So then I came to the Lee Ranch, which his brother owned, which is right outside of Hondo, Texas, about an hour and a half away from San Antonio. And this ranch is 864 acres of exotics and feral hog and whitetail and the rest of it. And I've continued my pursuit of, guiding for people, enjoying the outdoors with, other hunters that we feed off one another. I learned stuff from the northern boys that come down and tell me all about their moose hunt and elk hunt and caribou and things what they do. And my Mexican hunters that come up from Mexico come up with their fantastic ranches in Argentina and Mexico and different places. You constantly learn, and you gather this information to make yourself a better hunter when you get out there. So now altogether, in as much time as the guide spends out in the field, I probably have the equivalent of knowledge of someone who's been hunting for probably 40, 50 years. I mean, I've seen it. I've seen a lot. I've tracked a lot. I've been in situations where, I constantly learn, and I have a lot of exposure every season to learn, to adapt, to acclimate, to continue my pursuit and, going after the game I want to, or my hunters. And so I've hunted in Africa. I've hunted in Wyoming for elk. I've done heavily in South Texas. I've shot turkey with bow in Kansas. Next year I'll be in Canada hunting black bear. So my pursuit is not just hemmed with Texas. I'd like to really see new territory, challenge myself on training to go to new territories, with whatever that might entail. Like for the Wyoming trip for elk, I trained for 3 months, knowing I would be at 10,000 plus elevation, and knowing I need to get my cardio, my muscles up to par, to know you need to suit yourself for the environment you're hunting. And that's just part of being a good hunter, a responsible hunter, a hunter with a good moral compass, to know that we need to make ethical shots, practice our skill, and to put ourselves in a position where we are the best we can be in that situation. That's a little bit of history of myself.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime I see anything about the Lee Ranch on forums and stuff like that, the first thing that people say is, "Oh, Carlos, man, he's great. That's a great guy. Great guide." And that says a lot about your devotion and love for the sport and for getting and your excitement about getting people on animals. I mean, that's what you do for a living, and it really it shines through. So talk a little bit more about the ranch you're on. You say it's 800 acres. How many different species of animals do y'all have on there?
Oh, it's fantastic, Waco. At this ranch, we have all the big exotics, which would encompass, of course, the one and foremost, always after the axis. We have blackbuck, Sika, fallow. We have all different types of rams. For the ram hunters, we have, of course, the black Hawaiian, the Texas Doll, the Corsican, the Mouflon, the paints, those kind of things. We have, tons of feral hogs. Turkey season is fantastic. We have an environment conducive for turkey, so our turkey are rampant when it comes around. So the springtime turkey hunt is fantastic. We do offer whitetail hunts. We have whitetail ranging in the class of 120s to 160 class out there. We protein feed. We make sure our animals are healthy. We really try and make it a good environment to where the animals are not necessarily walking over one another, but we want to make sure our hunters see a good amount of animals. I mean, that's important to me. When I would go to other day leases, just like I said, my hunters, I want them to see animals. Granted, to get the shot is one thing, but to know the animals are out there another. So we actually do fly chopper on this ranch to do animal count, as well as I'm always, very cognizant of the animals that we do have there currently. So when I feel that any certain breed seems like we've shot quite a number out, I can tell the owner, we go ahead and bring them in, and then we start the whole game back over. What we like to do on this ranch is we let the ranch, what I call, settle down or quiet down. So we pass a lot of hunters through the cold months when everyone loves to come hunt and have a good time because it's more cohesive when you're not sweating out there in the middle of July. Now it's December. It's cooler weather. The animals are responding to our senderos and our corns and what we're doing. And then we kind of stop hunting. That's what I like to do. We stop hunting about, I'd say April through the latter part of August. That way these animals can kind of calm down, get in their own natural patterns, and then we ramp it back up again. We throw it right back at them. And so this ranch, like I said, is over 800 acres, high fence. He did a really good job with, of course, making sure that they're constantly protein fed. We want to make sure our animals are always healthy, mature, as big as we can get them. And we have a large sendero that's almost, if you can imagine, like a big circle that kind of almost covers the entire 800 acres. And on that circle, I have 21 different stands that I set, and they can range from anything from brush blinds, ground blinds, 7-foot stands, 12-foot ladders, 15-foot tripods. Whatever is good for the hunter and his safety realm, I will put him on. Lock-on stands are 20-foot, and I'm always moving them. Because as much as I've hunted, the last thing any hunter wants to do is get to some day lease that he's not familiar with. The guide puts them on the stand, the animals start to come in, but they're very wary, almost because they know that spot has been shot out. They know what could be coming out of that tree. So I like to keep these animals guessing, as well, of course, as playing ultimate downwind scenarios. Everyone loves their scent control and their ozonics and whatever they do and their scent-free stuff. However, I love to always just put my hunters downwind. When you have that good wind in your face, a dominant direction, I think it just puts the favors in the hunter. And granted, you'll have animals behind you, and that's where your scent control play comes in part. But, just making sure the hunter is the best possible spot as far as, making the shot happen.
Yeah, that is definitely important. And let's talk about a little bit more about some of the animals now. Are y'all bringing in pigs as well, or how do they do on reproducing? Are y'all having to buy those every year as well?
Correct. What happens is, of course, these feral hogs reproduce quite a bit. At 6 months old, a female feral hog is sexually mature at 6 months old. And so she can pump out. Now, it's a fallacy that guys see a feral pig with 20 piglets. That's not always the case. A typical brood of piglets is anywhere from about 4, as much as maybe 10. What normally happens when hunters see, especially free range, a sow that has 20-plus piglets is that their other mother died, and she adopted those piglets with her. So we do shoot quite a few pigs to where when we run low numbers, we have local trappers in our territory that are just down the road that are actually trapping off a farm field to where these things are scourges causing damage, destruction of property, what have you. And so they trap them in mass and bring them to us just within our own, several miles away from our ranch, which our ranch is an approved holding facility to where, of course, our fences are always good. They cannot escape. We keep them, contained. Granted, of course, they're all over around us anyways. I even trap on the owner's low fence, which is just barely half a mile down the road, to add to the whole numbers that are coming in. Because the hogs on the Lee Ranch are the staple of every package we offer. And so if nothing else, I want to make sure there's plenty of gnarly hogs coming through. And that can be anything from meat pigs, which I consider anything from about 30 to 90 pounds. We have the mid pigs that normally go from about 100 to 150 pounds. And then what I consider, really good sized hogs, closing in close to the realms of 200 to over that. which we do. We have a couple pigs on our ranch right now that, well, I shouldn't say a couple, we definitely have more than 20 that were surpassed 250 pounds. And these are big, gnarly pigs that are actually half strained in with the Eurasian strain boar, which are different from normal ferals. The Eurasian strain boar has a more slope-nosed appearance because of the elongated snout. They normally have a razor back. Generally, their teeth, depending on genetics and where they've come from, can be a little bit larger. And their attitude is absolutely out of this world. These are the kind of pigs that will hurt you. Absolutely. Injured, cornered, or pissed off. I mean, these things get mad. So we have a little bit of everything when it comes to both the ferals and the Eurasian strain boar. We have both at our ranch.
Yeah, the pigs for me are just always a bonus. Texas obviously has a huge population, and it makes me happy. I love shooting pigs with a bow, and a lot of people. It's kind of a double-edged sword with pigs. A lot of people hate them. A lot of people love them. I'm on the loving side of them. So anyway, yeah, it's great to, especially you're sitting in a blind and one comes by. I'm popping that thing every time, even if I'm waiting for another animal. That pig's going down. So yeah, it's good that y'all have got a good population. Sounds like y'all are managing them pretty well. So.
Well, we try and run on this ranch in 800 acres. We try and run them close to the 200 range on the hogs. But it's a balancing act, Waco.
Yeah.
Because what happens is you don't want to have a ranch that is so far put out on the amount of animals that it's not conducive to what the ranch can hold. You'll go to day leases to where when you arrive, there is no grass. It is eaten. It is destroyed. There's too many deer, too many hogs, and there's nothing for them to eat. Even you can see what's called a browse line, which is where even the deer have nothing on the ground, so they turn to foraging and strip the forest or the underbrush to a certain degree where they can reach. And so that, to me, it starts to, raise red flags. You want to research your ranches on what you want to get into and make sure that, of course, it's an environment that, is as natural as possible, and they're not starving to the fact that there is nothing but dirt and rocks in a browse line. It's very important to know what you can balance. So we know that at this ranch we can run numbers near 200 without sacrificing the local flora, as far as the different bottle brush and wild grasses and things that grow, and cactus and all our oak trees and everything else. Because we want to make sure these animals, granted, are in our property, but they can also live, and they can actually have a place where they can regress and escape from the pressure of hunting if they need to, and come back and reproduce. And we don't want to just have a property that's nothing more than a caged hunt or a kill pen. This is real hunting. And so these animals, many of the breeds are very, very savvy. There's no guarantee at this ranch. This ranch is perfectly stocked, I believe, that, we don't have animals that are piled on top of one another. And that's what makes good hunting. A challenge, something you can put yourself into and know that you might or might not score. But just to be out there and know the animals are there, that's what we're all about. And to make sure we get close.
Yeah, agreed, man. Let's move on to axis deer. That's another one that's my favorite, man. I love to eat them, and I love to see them. They're a beautiful animal. How are y'all looking on those? Y'all got a good population?
Absolutely. I flew a chopper survey earlier this year, and we counted upwards of 80-plus axis on the chopper flyby. And of those 80-plus axis, I'd say we had at least 40-plus bucks. And out there, we have, of course, as anyone who knows axis, they normally drop their horns on their birthday. Now, granted, we have what I consider a winter herd. That's just my own terminology. And that just means nothing more than the fact that 85 to 90% of our axis in the winter at this specific ranch, in this specific territory, are hardhorn. And that's what you're looking for. Most hunters, granted, I'd love to shoot a big velvet. Big, beautiful velvets are awesome, just like any big, beautiful whitetail. However, we found out that when we allowed hunters to shoot velvet axis, they were shooting axis down at 21 inches, 25 inches, when the potential could have been a 36-inch axis or a 30-plus inch axis. So we hold off our hunters from shooting velvet. That way, these animals can reach pure maturity and have the biggest horns possible. And we do have many axes out there that surpass 30. The other day I was sitting at a water hole just to sit by myself and watch the animals come in. And I had one well over 35 inches. I had two that would surpass 27 easily on their way to 30, all Horhorn with 7 does coming through, as well as the big aoudad, and I saw a beautiful black buck in the background. So we definitely try and manage these animals to a degree to where we offer trophies that you would proudly display on your wall. Plus, of course, the axis coming from, Indian Nepal territory, they can reproduce throughout the year, even the cold season. So most of these does are either in heat, will be in heat, or pregnant throughout the year. Now, in our territory, these axis bucks go into rut in the hottest month, which would be cohesive with, let's say, late June, July, August time frame. That's when they go into what we call the roar. Doing the solid, call them the rut, the roar. And so that's when, if you can get on with the heat and you can get out there, you're more than welcome to come. But it's going to be a hot, crazy hunt. But those axis bucks are moving and cruising at that point in time on the majority level. However, they still continue to reproduce throughout. Now, knowing that this is a non-native deer species, unlike the whitetail, they hold their vitals more far forward. So I educate my hunters and say, look, this is just like when I went to Africa. You shoot what's called for the deadly V. And that just means that you look at that animal broadside. You identify what I call the elbow, that front leg, the little elbow right beneath his chest there. You come up about 5-6 inches and about in forward towards his neck about 1 or 2 inches. You're putting that more inside that leg than you would when you shoot a whitetail. That's where these deer hold their lungs and their heart in that area right there. You shoot them like a whitetail, and a lot of times you're going to start hitting liver and paunch. It's too far back. These deer are very much different from a whitetail here. Now, can you still score on an axis shooting like a whitetail? Sure, you can. But if you really want to put your arrow where it needs to count, you go up that leg line and in just an inch or two, and any way you look at it, the arrow goes in where you exactly want it to. You're golden. Up, down, left, right, everything is goodness right there. Lungs and heart, 100%.
Yeah, that's really good information, and I'm glad you brought that up. As a matter of fact, as we go through animals here, keep on, giving us an idea of where you would look to put your shot on each one of these. If it, fallows, rams, all these different ones. Because a lot of people, they're from Texas. They've seen whitetails and pigs. They know where to shoot them. But when it comes to some of these more exotics, it's a good idea to have an idea of where to shoot before you let it fly. So thanks about
Absolutely.
that. So how about the fallows? Do you guys, what do y'all have, cinnamons out there, or do you have a little bit of both?
Oh, we have all three.
Uh-huh.
Now, fallows, let me regress just for a second, just back to axis, just for a second, Waco. One thing I'm going to make sure our hunters know about that are listening to us right now are that the axis are the most savvy, reclusive, secretive deer species that you will ever find on the exotics in Texas. It is their nature. Okay, they're from the jungles of Indian Nepal, where on the old Natural Omaha in shows we used to watch on TV, when the Bengal tigers are hunting those deer in the woods, those are chital deer, otherwise known as axis deer. So these deer have grown up their entire lives knowing that they better have their head on a swivel for these tigers coming at them. So when it comes to hunting them here in Texas, they have never lost that amount of pure savviness when it comes to eyesight, hearing, and smell. So these hunters that really want to shoot axis, whoever comes out of South Texas, the first thing on their list when it comes to exotics is axis. And why is that? Because axis are so hard to hunt, but they have the best of everything. The most beautiful horns on the 3x3s, fantastic dotted coats, suckled coat with a dorsal stripe, and of course their meat is elite. Their meat is the most red, supple meat that anyone's ever tasted, far supersedes whitetail. So, of course, they're a very sought-after game animal, but you must bring your A game when hunting axis at any ranch, whether it be the Lee Ranch or any other ranch for that matter, on the fact that you need to play everything you can when hunting these animals, because their sight, hearing, and smell all come in play with this one species of animal. And so I tell my hunters, when they come in, you better draw behind the brush to reduce motion. Watch your wind. Don't kick your stand by accident with your boot. Anything unnatural to these deer will make them fly like you've never seen. And then once you're busted, you're busted. They're not coming back in. You have just blown a set on a wise, mature axis buck, and they are gone. So just FYI to the guys listening to us right now that they can be harvested with a bow. Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, gun hunters, they can take them long range, and that's a bit easier. But with a bow, you need to bring your A game against them. So now let's kind of tip into what you just asked me earlier about the fallow. Fallow are the only exotic deer species that actually come in different colors. They're all the same animal. They just come in different colors. So you can have white fallow. You can have chocolate fallow. You can have fallow that are actually cinnamon spotted, much like an axis, although their red is a bit more subdued. Their tail looks different, though. They actually have a black tail with white comma marks on the spotted fallow bucks or does. And what's interesting is the fallow species always have an Adam's apple, which is kind of bizarre. The males will have it as well as the females. So that's another telltale sign when you have, let's say, fallow does coming in and axis does coming in. An axis doe is more refined, like a beautiful white-tailed doe with a skinny neck, thin, refined, short hair. Fallow tend to be a little bit more fluffy to a degree, have a black tail with the white comma marks, spotted on top with the red, half their body's divided, white on bottom, and they have the white go from their chin to their stomach. Big, big, big signs telling you that is a fallow doe. An axis rolls up between your fallow does. What she's going to have? She's going to have those beautiful crimson red on top, oranges to crimson red, spots. She'll have a dorsal stripe. She'll have a red tail and a throat patch, just like a white tail. So those are three key factors differentiating these two different species of deer that look very similar. But the fallow we have at the ranch, we have, of course, females and males. And we do have, let's see what we're running now. We have 6 chocolate fallow bucks. We have 9 white fallow bucks. And we have 13 spotted fallow bucks out the ranch right now. Granted, right now, currently, these are what I consider teenagers. They're right about 3.5 to 4 years old. And their palmation, when I mention the word palmation, that means a horn that actually flattens out much like a hen. Palm. They can be anywhere from a couple points to upwards of 20-plus points as far as when they get mature and they really start branching out. Typically have the brow tines like a whitetail. They will paddle out as they get older. If you want to research this, just research New Zealand fallow, and you will see the potentials of how big and wide these horns can get. And so that is what makes a fallow, palmate horns, a very different structure of the horns that come off of fallow deer. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's almost kind of like a moose, but in a little bit, smaller form as far as their antlers go. They're really neat looking and really pretty animals. And yeah, I didn't know that about the fallows. I figured those were different species if they were different colors and all that. I didn't. That was really interesting. I didn't know that. And I appreciate you regressing too on axis. I could talk about those for an hour, but those things are incredibly, incredibly jumpy, and they'll work together as a herd. That's kind of that's not like the whitetails at all. One of them chirps or barks, man, all of them are on, and their eyes are amazing. They really are an amazing animal, and table fare you just can't beat. Now, I'm really glad that we're getting a lot of free range ones in Texas. I just hope I hope we get more. The more the merrier for me. Whenever I hear of properties with hundreds and thousands of them, that really makes me happy. So,
well, it's interesting, Waco. Back in the 1920s, the first axis deer were brought to Texas, basically on ranches for table fare. And what happens, like in many ranches, they get out. And the Texas Parks and Wildlife did a study about 15 years later on the different territories of South Texas where we started to find that we had conducive and large amounts of free-range axis deer. And as they continued their study, they found out that these axis deer can actually outcompete whitetail for natural forage. They can eat things that not even a whitetail can eat. They can live and get without water more so than any whitetail can. So they basically adopted Texas as their secondary home. And sure enough, we start seeing large amounts of free-range axis popping up, north of San Antonio, deeper than San Antonio, Pleasanton. Different parts. They were just coming out and breeding and reproducing and living and adjusting. And because of their tactics of being very adaptable, as well as being very smart and secretive, they have taken over certain territories. And that's a fantastic thing. But, of course, when you're hunting whitetail, especially on a ranch that's just whitetail, you wouldn't want to have the pressure of the exotics like the axis in mass numbers to kind of, what really does happen, stress out the whitetail.
Yeah,
but we keep a close eye on our balancing act to make sure that our ranch is always conducive to what the animals need.
Yeah, it absolutely is a balancing act, and luckily, like I say, they're so good to eat that it's not a problem taking them out. I mean, I think that meat's easy to it's good for local shelters and stuff like that. It's to me, it's almost as good as beef. I really do enjoy eating it. So I think those populations can be managed, so that they're not pushing out whitetails and all that stuff. But all right, man, let's talk about rams. How tell us the species y'all have out there, and tell us a little bit about those.
Okay. Well, rams generally, when it comes to the Big Five slam, you're talking about Texas Dog, you're talking about, different things like Corsican big rams, you're talking about the Mouflons, you're talking about black Hawaiians, and things of that nature. And so these are different rams that are bred at different ranches. They're brought in for their horn size, and then, of course, hunted from there on out. Ram, as far as table fare, is not normally something most guys, want to mess with. Rams are a fickle type of meat. Either you know how to cook it or you don't. But as far as a trophy mount, they're fantastic. I have guys that are just elite ram hunters. That's what they care about. And so we like to run a gamut of multiple different species at the ranch. So you can pick what you want, whether it be Catalina, which also called the Spanish goat. Now, their horns, of course, flare out. Like they're also called the devil's goat. They go sideways, flatten out, and go completely perpendicular to their heads. A large body goat with kind of like a billy beard, big body goat. They come in all different colors. Your typical black Hawaiian will be always black, with horns that actually curl as they come off the head. They curl down toward the eyes, curl back toward the rear end, come back again, and then flare out. So same thing with Texas Dog. Their horns are the same way. We also have what's called Jacob's four-horn rams. That's another species of ram where they actually have two horns coming almost left and right off their head, but yet have another set of horns that curl down under on the left and right of their face. So these are all different breeds that you'll find both at our ranch and different ranches. And depending on, of course, on the size of the horn dictates the price they're hunted at. Because some of these horns take quite a while to grow. And so, of course, more goes into, of course, feeding the animals and maintaining them and basically harboring them for all their time. Sometimes you can go to ranches where these rams are very tame, just because they've been around humans growing up half their life. However, we like to bring them in pretty much semi-wild, and if they're not, I just help them out a little bit. And of course, I put the fear to them, and when I put fear, I'm just going to kind of put it a little bit blatantly. If they're not wild, then I make sure they get wild, and I make sure I put the fear of man into them, just because I don't want anything tame on a ranch. I want a real hunt. You can go to the ranches where literally you can knock the hail bell off the back of a truck. These different species of rams will run up, and you plug them away. That's not what I'm about, and that's not what I want this ranch to be about. And so we don't do it that way. This ranch, we bring them in. If they need the fear put into them, we do. And now they are gnarly and wild and will spook at the scent of a human or the sight of a human. And now they are conducive, to a real-world hunting situation. So, yes, we do run multiple different species. And to shoot them, you shoot them like a whitetail. Basically, behind their shoulder will be fine. Rams, in my opinion, are a bit of kind of how I put this. They're weak. They'll take an arrow or a bullet and basically go down fairly quickly. They're not that strong. Axis are very strong. Black are very strong, and Aoudad are very strong as far as taking a good solid hit and continuing to go with it. But like we all know as hunters, it's all about shot placement. The better you put it, the better chance of recovery.
Right. Yeah, those Audads are built like, they're just solid muscle, looks like. I had one come in at the Quattro B. That thing was impressive, man. And, yeah, it looks like it could probably take a licking and keep on ticking,
Yeah, well, they have to be Waco. And the reason for this is that these Audads, which we have a huge amount of Audads at this ranch, we have big audheads at this ranch. They're from northern Africa, okay? They're used to climbing up plateaus and rocky gorges and the rest of it. So they know what it takes, and they've adapted throughout their whole lifestyle to maintain that big muscle and the big lung capacity to be able to go up and down crags and all over the place and what they're doing. So this is an animal that you have to shoot well. Otherwise, I mean, we shot the most audheads last season and lost the most audheads last season because they are so strong. So once again, we're going to go ahead and regress back to remembering in your brain when you're shooting a non-native game animal, where do they come from and how do I shoot them? Same thing applies to the audhead. You want to do the deadly V maneuver. Come up that front elbow, mid-body, and in a couple inches. Once again, they hold their vitals between their legs. And by putting that arrow or that bullet where it needs to be in that territory, you're golden.
All right, man. So how about red stag? Do you guys carry those out there? Do you have any?
No, at this ranch, we do not have red stag. Now, there are other ranches I know of. If my hunters are interested, I just want to put a plug in for the Timberlake bow hunting ranch, which used to be the old Quattro. They brought in both the stag we had there as well as European red stag. And when I say European strain, that means, of course, a strain that will crowd claw at the top, have the most points, the most mass, the most body girth. They have those over there. But at our ranch, no, we don't tend to mess with red stag only because they're so destructive. They wreak havoc on protein feeders, camping out, gorging themselves on our expensive protein, and they really work a number on our trees when they go into their roar. So no, we don't have a stag or a European red deer at this ranch.
Huh. You know, I've heard of some people starting to try and bring in elk into Texas, or maybe they've been doing it for a while now. I don't know, but have you heard of anything like that? People offering those hunts anywhere, or are they?
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, granted, of course, people, and this is just when it comes to play with the hunters that are listening to us right now. Do your research. Search for the ranches and the animals that you're after, and really, really talk to the owners. Talk to whoever you can. Talk to maybe past hunters where they have references, that you can get a good grip on the quoting animals that are currently at that ranch. Not what we saw shot down 3 years ago, old pictures. No, I want to know what's going on there right now and what you're running. And they've been doing elk hunts down here in Texas for quite some time. Now, granted, do these elk ever get massively crazy big like they do in Colorado, New Mexico, Wyoming? No. The conditions are different. Just like the northern whitetail, normally a body size supersedes us by threefold. However, can there be trophy elk here in South Texas, West Texas? Absolutely yes. And there's some very elite ranches that they take it upon themselves to put in the genetics and the energy and the food sources that make them trophy-sized animals. But to me, especially when it comes to some of these ultra exotics like elk, for example, I'd rather just hunt them in their own territories. And if I have to hike up a mountain 3 miles back and in and up and down canyons and gorges, that's what it takes to get an animal on its own territory, like an elk. And that's just my 2 cents when it comes to that.
Huh? Yeah, that's interesting. What about Yeah, I was just about to say. Is there any other animals that we didn't talk about? I kind of
absolutely. Well, there's cycad deer. Okay, So some guys say, a lot of guys misconstrue the name Sitka and Sitka deer. They're two completely different species. We do not have Sitka deer down here. Sitka deer are mostly super north type of deer. We have cycad deer. Now, cycad deer were brought, same thing, back to Texas back in the day, and we don't normally have, we have 4 subspecies. Okay, we have the Japanese cycad, the Manchurian, the Formosan, and the Zabowski. We run currently the biggest of the big, which is the Zabowski and the Manchurian. And so the Zabowski is the biggest bodied deer out there. And their native habitat is southeastern Siberia, eastern Manchuria, and northern Korea. The Manchurian come from southern Manchuria and Korea. Although the demographics have what changed these animals. Now, when they brought them to Texas years and years and years ago, there's been so many interbreeding between these species of the big 4 that it's almost hard to tell exactly, what are you shooting at. But when it comes to pure strain, which we like to bring in for the most part, that's when you see the difference. Those Dabowskis, they have the biggest bodies and the biggest horns. Manchurians tend to be a little bit smaller in stature. They actually have spots, very faint spots, and barely a dorsal stripe. Dark chocolate deer. The males will have kind of a shag beard, I call it. They normally have a white butt, almost like if you hunters out there can think of mule deer, they have that kind of like white kind of common marks on the sides of their butt. And they're a very pugnacious ornery deer. These deer are part, actually, when you research their genome, go back into the stages of elk. So they taste very reminiscent of elk meat, these Sika deer do. And they go into rut later on in their season. You'll hear them calling. They normally run a harem of their girls. They're all, if you can think of a melanistic whitetail, that's what the does look like. A very chocolate, pristine whitetail doe with a white butt. That is actually a Sika doe. Very close crop fur, very elegant looking, deep Hershey's chocolate with a bit of a white butt. Normally is what they look like. It's Sika deer.
Yeah, man. Whenever you said harem, that made me think of black buck. That's one we almost forgot to talk about. They also run in a harem as well. And what I found interesting, I think I learned at the Quattro B, was the more females they have in their harem, the darker their coat. Is that correct?
That's half correct, Waco. Actually, okay. It has a lot to do with maturity as well. You can have a mature black buck that is 23 inches, 24 inches big, yet he is tan on top and white on bottom, just like a typical black buck doe. He's not mature enough. He has genetics to spawn fantastic horns, but it's age and running a lot of does is what makes his testosterone surge as he's sexually mature, which basically reconfigures his testosterone levels and then induces a black pigment to throw out to the hair follicles to turn him black on top and, of course, white on bottom. So it's basically kind of a balancing act between the two. He needs to run lots of females and, of course, be at a good sexual mature age to almost flip the switch in his body, change body chemistry, and then turn black on top and, of course, the white on bottom.
Man, that's really interesting, yeah.
And as you said, they do run normally a group of females throughout the year. Sometimes they'll break away. They'll get into their small little batch of groups. They'll come quickly back to it. And I don't know if you saw it, Waco, but as you're stalking through the woods, many of my hunters come across what looks like, I know this is crazy, but it looks like cottontail, scat, which, very small, round. Actually, that's black buck right there. And what black bucks do is they have a marker point on their territory fringes where they come back and they mark their territories with their scat day after day after day. And as a hunter, when you come across this, you can see these mounds of what looks like a rabbit scat, but actually it's not. It's actually black buck, to where they continue to relieve themselves, and they're warning every other black buck to stay out of that territory. This is my territory. This is my group of girls. And so I can actually have hunters, depending on how well that scat is placed and how fresh it is, to sit up on that area, and sure enough, almost like clockwork, those big males will come to that territory to remark it, and there you go. You got that black buck.
Yeah, they're kind of their own worst enemy, huh? Yeah. So
absolutely, they leak the information out to what they're doing. Mm-hmm.
So you hit on earlier about some of the techniques y'all are using. Ground blinds, brush blinds, tree blinds. What seems to be the better setups during? Is it seasonal? I mean, or is it when it's colder and there's less leaves? Are y'all using different types of blinds than when it's there's still some green on the ground and what talk to us about that.
Sure. Absolutely. As a hunter, you want to be malleable. You want to be amendable. You want to be able to change tactic as the seasons dictated. So like you touched off on, when it's green and low brush, it's fantastic to put in a really well screening ground blind, if that's your flavor. As the seasons change, let's say we want to get into the trees. However, the oak trees are dropping their leaves or they're getting a little bit thin. It's very... it's kind of a tactic to where you want to get a little bit lower. When they're thick and full, sure, get up in those trees. To me, I want to get myself above the eyeballs of those exotics. And the best way to do it is to get high. And when I say high, that's nothing more than 8 foot or above. Because these animals are so savvy that on ground blinds, sometimes you can brush in the most fantastic ground blind that to a human looks dissolved and part of the natural scape. But to them, they see that black shooting window and it freaks them out. So when it comes to exotics, almost any time of the year, I rather just get above the eyeballs and get up in the air somewhere, whether that be an 8-foot tripod, 10-foot ladder stand, lock-on stand. Get your sand cone up, get it, of course, downwind, just in case they come, behind you as much as you can, sand cone going over their heads, and just get above them. And then from there, you're good to go. But the other species, like let's say the rams and the hogs, it doesn't matter. To them, no. They're going to come down that corn trail. It can be a ground blind any time of the season, low, not going to matter. But when you're going after savvy stuff like very wild fallow and wild, super wild actus and savvy black buck and all that, get above their eyeballs, and it will give you the best opportunities available.
Yeah, and obviously scent control is super important. What is there anything y'all are doing to try and combat that or help out in that regard?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, I always put my hunters downwind. So when we go set stands, I'm constantly looking at my apps to see how the wind's going to change, what the wind's doing now, and what the wind will be doing in 3 hours. If we set a stand in the middle of the day on a north wind, and for some weird reason it's going to switch to the east on the cooling thermals, then, hey, we need to make something more for the east wind, not what it's doing currently. Mm-hmm. However, like we all know, sometimes stuff can change. I mean, unbeknownst to us. And suddenly we set for what should have been a north wind, and now it's slipping in. It's backdrafting back and forth, back and forth. So scent control is what can save you from an animal knowing that a human's been there, and okay, I'll still come through, or there's a human definitely here, and I'm gone. So that's where scent control comes into play. Mm-hmm. And to me, my scent control regimen is nothing more than my hunting gear in a Tupperware container. And actually, my biggest thing is, of course, I wash them in scent-free soap, of course, in the washing machine. I put them in a Tupperware container, and I like to take the natural forage of where I know I'm going. So if there's oak trees, if there's cedar trees, if there's bottle brush, I'll get some of that. I'll put them in there just as a cover set. So basically, this is something they're used to. My clothes smell like oak leaf. They smell like cedar trees. They smell like whatever could be out there, like grass. If you have to pick grass off your lawn, do it. Earth scent. Put some dirt in there if you want to in the corner, just to kind of saturate those clothes and what naturally is conducive to these animals and what they're in for every day of their lives. I mean, this is what they know. They know the smell of dirt, they know the smell of leaves and dried twigs and the rest of it. That kind of gives me an upper when it comes to putting those clothes on after my scent-free shower. I'll go ahead and do maybe some scent killer spray on my boots because I've been walking around camp just to be extra paranoid. And then at that point, I double my stand, working on dominant wind, so when stuff does move behind me, it won't shoot them off. Because as you mentioned earlier, Waco, that these animals are basically sentries to every other species out there. If I have 30 animals and an axis blows, every animal will shoot off that road. If a hog comes through and he does that guttural growl, that low, deep, almost growl, he knows there's something wrong there. And every animal picks up on what every other animal is doing, whether that be a coyote they think they're sensing, a human, a bobcat, whatever's going on. They know this, and they can warn each other off that and blow the hunt. So by playing the wind, absolute, the number one factor, absolute. Secondary is scent control, just in case stuff comes around you or the wind starts to switch, backdraft, and kind of getting kind of weird on you. And between those two, you'll be good to go. That's as much as we can do.
Yeah, and I think the more you can do, the better. It really couldn't hurt. You know what I mean? I don't know if it's possible to get too out of control on scent control. I mean, might as well do what you can. So let's talk about camo, man. Do y'all have a pattern that works best out at that ranch for y'all's foliage?
Absolutely not.
No?
Absolutely not.
Yeah, okay.
I've been in this game for so long that these guys get out of control on certain camo patterns. The premise behind camo is breaking up the human form. Basically, just breaking it up, confusion in the pattern. But does one camo work any better than the next when it comes to hunting up in a tree? I don't really think so. To me, any kind of pattern. Now, granted, I'm maybe one of those hardcore hunters where I like my spring camo, my winter camo, this and that. And I mean, that's something we can think about as far as like, well, it's a lot of stuff in the fall time is brown and dull tans and the rest of it. I mean, you want to be maybe in full green camo up in a tree that's all brown. Well, sure, you might want to switch a little bit. But does it really matter? No, I don't think so. The biggest thing to me is I've seen a lot of my hunters that are well camoed in whatever pattern, but they don't do anything with their face. So as I drive by them to corner set, I see this big pink blob looking out of a brush line, or a big pink blob of a face looking down from a tree. That's the only thing I can think that some of these animals that actually are color receptive pick up on that going, well, that's not right. And same thing with the whole predator eyes thing. And some of these hunters can relate to this. Whitetail, some of the guys that have the hunted axes, it's so funny. And when you see them and you look at them, and they do catch you and they look at you, it's almost like those front forward-facing eyes as a predator can kind of freak them out. And that's where we can get into all kinds of little bitty tactics where we look to the side, look away from them, whatever, because some of these guys are very educated. And one little thing will set them off, whether they be looking straight at them, almost like a coyote or any kind of predator. It's weird. It sounds strange, but I've seen it actually blow off animals. I've seen it where I look away, kind of keep it, but they're kind of like, what was that thing in that tree? Didn't look quite right, kind of thing. So that's another story to be told. But as far as camos, no. I try and keep it to the season that it should be. So if we're in the spring green, I do a green camo. If I'm in the dead, dull fall, I do a darker kind of camo pattern. But I have just as much success rates with guys mixing up the camo or mismatched than anything else. So it's just a hunter's preference of what he wants to do.
All right, man. Well, what about equipment? I'm sure you see guys show up with the, who knows what, and all kinds of weird bows, arrows, sights, floating pins, this pin, that pin, all kinds of weird stuff. What does that ranch dictate the type of broadheads that can be used, or do y'all recommend certain stuff?
At this ranch, we allow mechanicals as well as fixed cut-on-contact kind of broadheads. So whatever your flavor is, you can shoot at this ranch. I love expandables for thin-skinned game, like my deers and my smaller pigs. For my big, gnarly, big bore hogs, I use cut-on-contact. To drive deep, to drive home, because you're going through a lot of gristle, you're going through that gristle shield, you want to get in there as much as possible with your KE, kinetic energy, behind your arrow to drive that arrow deep. My biggest things I see with my hunters come through is I don't care what sight you have. I don't care what bow you have. If you can shoot it well and put the arrow where it needs to be, your money. Mm-hmm. Okay? Mm-hmm. But like I said, it all boils down to shot placement. You can shoot the smallest little 75-grain broadhead and kill the biggest oddhead if you put it where it needs to be. Mm-hmm. That's not a big concern with me. But, of course, it's an influx to where, like me personally, I like to keep 2 cut-and-caught broadheads. My allegiance is with Slick Trick. And then expandable, whatever I'm shooting, Swacker, Rage, Montec expandable, whatever. Just for my thin-skin stuff, I like to open up big holes because I'm not worried about big leg bones or big gristle shields, so that's where I would turn to my expandable. Mm-hmm. My big thing is I want my hunters to practice shooting down. Most of our stands, you're going to be sitting. Get used to sitting, okay? Get used to maybe, if you can, in your backyard, set up something maybe up in the air so you know the difference when shooting down. Now, granted, of course, none of my stands really, truly are taller than 15, so the arc angle isn't anything different from almost sitting on the ground. When you're up northern hunting and you're 20 plus, you got to think about compensation for the trajectory and the angle and that kind of stuff. But at least practice shooting down and get yourself on a 20-25 yard shot, which are basically 90% of my stands. That's where I place every stand. I don't want hunters taking 40-yard shots or 35-yard shots if they don't have to. I want them close. I want them up for sure thing. That's what I'm all about. Something you price at, that's just an easy breeze, drop the 20 pin, go for kind of stuff.
Yeah. Do you try and shoot with your hunters when they show up, just to make sure they kind of know what they're doing and that they can, their bows are on and they can shoot an accurate shot?
Absolutely. It's imperative. When my hunters show up, we have an archery range there, 20, 30, 40 yards. We both have field point targets and broadhead targets. If a hunter happens to break out a brand new pack of Muzzy 3 125 grain or whatever he might be shooting, and he's never shot before. Just thinking from his buddies, he's told it, this is the range you should be shooting it. I want you to sacrifice that broadhead, because as we know, fixed blades fly different from, of course, your field points much of the time unless your bow is properly tuned. I want you to sacrifice that one broadhead to make sure it's not planting 6 inches left the entire time or sporadic and all over the place. Make sure your equipment is up to par. If that means you go through 3 or 4 different sets of fixed cut-on-contact broadheads, then do it. You owe it to the animal and you owe it to yourself to know your equipment and how it performs. And I demand that of my hunters. If you go out to our ranch and I see you missing the target, shooting all over, we're going to have to go ahead and you and I are going to spend some time to make sure you're on before you go out there. Because, like I just said, we want an ethical, clean shot, and it's up to us to make sure our equipment performs to the paramount on what we deserve.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So, all right. Well, moving away from equipment and stuff like that, let's talk a little bit. Do y'all have predators on that ranch, or have y'all managed them pretty well, or is there still a few left? What's going on with that?
As the ranch manager and the ranch guide, it's up to me to stop these critters from coming in, because, of course, it's basically like a big free-for-all. With as many animals you run, all the young kits and little guys, little fawns of every species run around. So I try to bait them as much as I can. I trap the fence line with whatever I can to stop the coyote, the fox, the bobcat from coming in. But all you can do, as much as you guys know out there listening to right now, you can only keep them under control so they don't get out of hand. You could never kill them all. Right. But I try and stop them as much as possible. Now, granted, I allow my hunters, if you see any type of predator, the big 3, the coyote, the bobcat, the fox, you shoot them, no charge. You're just helping us out, and, having one more shot opportunity. So absolutely. They are in perimeter, and when we see them, I hope my hunters can shoot them because they're just helping us out.
Yeah, it's probably a good idea. Like you say, you've got so many different types of animals, and keeping those things out would be a good idea. What about, the replacement of animals? How often are y'all having to do that?
It depends, Waco. It's a case-by-case basis, depending on how many we're shooting down at a specific time of the year in the cool season, whether that be starting in September, October, November, December, January, February, March. Those are the main hunting times. So it just all depends, really. I mean, we might shoot down a bunch of action in the beginning, so we replace. We might have more longevity to where they take us across the entire board because we only shoot a couple. It just depends. And what's nice about this ranch hunter is that being that I'm the eyes and ears and the boots on the ground and knowing what's getting shot, I will tell him, hey, we need more of this. We need more of that. This can stay back. It's much a case-by-case basis, but I always want to make sure we have plenty of whatever species we need so that everyone has a good time and sees at least, what they want to go after. Mm-hmm. That's very important to me.
Are a lot of these animals bought at auction, or do they have ranches that breed them, or how do they come by a lot of these animals?
Well, a lot of, not just ourselves, but a lot of other ranches down here in Texas, they come from different facets. We have guys that trap animals. We have guys that breed them. We get them at auction. We have other guys that fly helicopter, and they might go to some property that has a enormous amount of free-range black buck, and they want to get off those black bucks. So they come with helicopters and net gun them. They load them with the trailers and bring them to us. So, or sometimes we have to go to auction to where we actually bid on these animals. We buy them, we load them up, we bring them into the ranch. So it just depends. A couple different ways that we bring them in. All we care about is that we get them and they come on in good, mature status. We do not buy anything young at this ranch. We don't want to buy them young for a cheaper price and have to grow them up the next 5 years for them to be big. We want them to come in big and shootable, or at least mid-sized big, so that way our hunters are going home with a trophy and not something that was young and shouldn't have been harvested that quick.
Yeah, so is it true that the prices for these animals have really skyrocketed the past couple of years especially? What are y'all seeing there?
Absolutely. We've seen the prices escalate, and basically they're on a bell curve right now that I can tell that it's going up and up and up and up and up. And different factors influence this, Waco, as far as what's going on. We all have heard about that chronic wasting disease syndrome with the whitetails. So some of those whitetail boys are now tapping into the market of exotics to make up for what they're losing in their whitetail, not being able to hunt them as much or losing their big breeders. So that's saturating the marketplace. So what happens is, like currently, just for example, let me use blackbuck for example. They're going for right about now anywhere from $80 to $100 an inch. We bring in nothing less than 20 inches on this ranch, so that's a $2,000 animal coming on this ranch. So you can hunt them as a package for $800, and if you actually score on one, is a $500 kill fee. So that's basically $1,300. We're not even making the price of that animal. But our ranch, we try and keep it on a hunter's budget and keep it in the realms of that, we want people to come. And there are other ranches that, sure, you'll go on their ranch and you'll pay whatever day fee to stay there for $300, $400, $500. But when you hit that block, you're paying $3,000 or $2,000. So different ranches have different modes of basically kill fees and hunt fees. But absolutely, every animal out there right now is basically at all-time high. The rams have been maybe the only exclusion to the fact, but even hogs. I mean, heck, back in the day, we could buy hogs for 10 cents a pound. Now they're going for 50 cents a pound plus bonus fees. So when my boys come in with hogs and they're over 200, we're paying an extra amount of money. Or their big tusks come in over 3 inches, we're paying extra money. So it's just all the marketplace, demand and what's going on with the rest of it. Supply and demand.
All right. Well, what about, tracking? Do you guys have dogs to help you out there, or is that something that you look over, or do y'all have other people come in and help out? Talk to us about that.
Sure. Well, what's nice is that even from Quattro days, and you probably remember Waco, we had the infamous Nacho and Jose.
Yeah. Right.
And these two dogs, they are Jack Russell Basset Hound mixes. And Nacho is the ultimate beast. So we have dogs on site for these animals that we can't recover right off the bat. And these dogs have been trained to not go after scent on any specific animal. No, they are blood-trained scent to where anything bleeds, those dogs are on it. And what's nice about these two dogs is that as a team, they work together. So as we're blood trailing and we as hunters are losing this and we're on our hands and knees on pinprick blood, this dog, so low to the ground, can pick up stuff that we can barely see and continue to go on and go on and go on. Now, he always wears a bell because mostly we're hunting in the evening and we're tracking late night. So as his bell continues to clank, 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 clank through the brush, when that bell goes silent, he's sitting right next to that animal. He's found it. But if he starts to bark and his brother starts to bark, oh, here comes some fun times. That animal is alive and bayed up. And these two dogs will work that animal and surround that animal. And on the hogs, anything bigger than they are, they know better. They know the pain that can come to them. So they just bayed up. I come in, I finish off the animal ethically, cleanly, shot to the head, done. With deers, I've seen them drive down axis bucks. I've seen them try and take down whitetail bucks. They have no fear on deer. I've seen them just last season. One dog was lashed on the back of a black buck on the hams, and the other one had him on the throat. These dogs are tenacious and amazing. So we do offer that tracking dogs for $25. That if we have to bring them out, it's $25. We'll run the dogs, and these dogs basically have a 95% success rate. If it bleeds, these dogs will find it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And I've been to one side of the ranch to the next. I remember when you were at the Quattro, there were other hunters where we went clear across the entire ranch going after an animal before, because it obviously was still very much being able to run and outdistance the dogs. The dogs still caught up with it. Same thing like over here. These dogs will run down an animal, and as long as it takes, they go into their own state of they better find it or, we're done with it. So amazing dog. We have that there.
Yeah, that's what they're bred to do. It just like kind of, comes natural to them. But speaking of success rate, how are your hunters doing? I know all these guys are probably seeing a lot of animals. As far as getting off shots, how are they doing on that? I know you're doing your best to get them on one, but how's that coming?
Sure. Well, it all depends on the season. There are many environmental factors that come in play that basically dictate what the animals want to do and what patterns they decide to take. Right now, currently, we're coming into the latter part of October. We have 65% oak trees out there. So we have a huge mass crop on the ground right now. These animals do not have to move off the acorns 3 inches deep beneath their hooves for corn. Corn right now is just kidney to them. So as time goes on, and of course the natural grasses die back as we get colder and colder, the temperature drops, these animals have to come out, it all changes. There's nothing that's specific at any time. So like many hunters know, you play the conditions and you can see the animal patterns change and success rates change as well. So it just all depends. I can never put a number on it because in the early season, it's slow. I'll be completely honest. It's slow. It's hard to get the animals to come out. Mm-hmm. We have to change tactics, whether we go to water, whether we go to more stalking. As we get colder and the last acorns are all eaten up or soured out and the hogs have finished them off, then we start to see that everyone's shooting everything that walks out because they have no other option. They have to stay warm. They have to eat. They have to come to the senderos and what we put out for them. So It always changes. It's never something that's on a flat line number scale.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Different seasons sometimes they're more well fed than other times of the year on different things. So let's kind of end this thing with day lease misconceptions. You look online and hear a podcast for anybody outside of Texas. A lot of people don't really understand kind of what we're doing down here with these high fences and 90-something% privately owned land and these day hunts. They've never been around them. They don't understand them. What are some of the misconceptions people have? Is there anything that you've heard personally?
Absolutely. A lot of guys, as well as myself, was a little bit skewed, a little bit just the palate not hit right when it comes to big high fences, thinking, oh my goodness, this whole place is a cage. How much challenge could this possibly be? And granted, there are certain ranches out there, if you don't do your homework, where these animals are basically put in mass numbers. We talked about the browse line earlier and how much they can eat, and of course, there's just so many of them, to where it's almost like what we'd consider a canned hunt. It's just too easy. There's nothing sporting about it. Way too many animals, way too much small property. They're literally on each other's backs, and it's a gimme hunt. But at other ranches like we run, and other ranches I know of, no, we keep our animals in check numbers, and we always maintain that it would be a fair chase hunt, even when it's in a fence. Now, granted, would we love to be low fence? Of course. If our animals wouldn't leave us and go 5 miles, 10 miles to the neighbor's property, but we have to somehow contain these animals because these axis, these oddhead, the rest of the ones that can jump, they will be gone. And we pay for them, and all of a sudden, within a month, they're 30 miles down the road and eating someone's crops. So we have to be high fence to contain them. However, we want that fair chase. We want wild animals. We want a sporting hunt, an ethical hunt, to where you could go empty-handed, and sometimes many times my hunters do. That is just part of hunting. We always normally shoot great stuff. I mean, this past weekend we shot 2 huge aoudad. We got close in access. We shot a black buck, fallow does, white-tailed does, some hogs. But it wasn't like that every sit. You will get skunked sometimes on a sit. These animals, you're trying to put an animal in a 20-yard range that can roam 874 acres. So it's a very kind of fair chase kind of maneuver to where these animals might come in, might not come in. So the misconceptions about the just because it's a high fence doesn't mean it's going to be a gimme hunt. And I've had hunters come in with a skewed perspective that just because the Quattro is high fence, just because the Lee is high fence, or my friends that run other big high fence, oh, I'm going to come here and slaughter everything. I'm going to kill everything. And all of a sudden they're soured because not every set has 100 animals on them. And I try and dispel those myths very quickly, saying, no. If anything, a daily set is run quite a bit is even harder than public low-fence land, just because these animals know the pressure. And that's something else you have to think about when you're trying to book a hunt at a high-fence ranch. Because if they're putting hunters back to back, that's a whole new thing. We don't like to do that because, of course, the animals, there's so much commotion in the field, they can lock up, which is my term. They do not want to come out no matter where I put my hunters because they know something's out there that's not quite right. Some danger's coming at them. So things to think about in researching day leases, knowing how many hunters are putting through it, how many animals they have, how the guides work the property, what they have on that property, how they manage the property, all different things to think about to make your hunt the best.
Yeah, absolutely. It just kind of upsets me sometimes to hear, like it seems to me like Texas is getting a bad name sometimes because of it, but it's an education thing. I've heard stories of certain species, like African species, supposedly in Texas. There's more of them here now than there are in Africa. So,
there's more blackbuck here in Texas than is actually in their native habitat back there in Africa.
Yeah.
And I don't know if some of these hunters can relate, but I think some of those hunters saw a 2020 episode a couple of years back on, of course, PETA jumping this theme as far as not liking the fact that we breed, we raise, and we hunt these different exotic animals here in Texas because it's conducive to their own environments where they came from. So they can live and they can flourish. And their big thing, of course, is, well, heck, I mean, you guys are breeding them just to kill. But the revenue stream that comes behind the hunters that put in for their tags, that pay these monies, that come to these different counties and ranges, there's such a huge revenue stream with hunters that come into play here that's helping out these animals. We are continuing their race. There's certain ranchers that all they do is breed these different types of deer. We're continuing and precipitating those breeds of deer that we can enjoy them, and your children will enjoy them, and our grandchildren can enjoy them. We are not, making these things extinct. If anything, we're precipitating their numbers so that we can enjoy them from now to years to come.
Yeah, absolutely. And the same things happen in Africa. They've got these massive high fence ranches, and if you talk to anybody over there, they would tell you if it wasn't for this going on, all these species would be extinct. They would be, if there's not a price and a value put on them to be protected and managed and bred, and there's incentive for that. And it's a debate that I think people should have. It's just important, but.
Right. Absolutely. Well, I was on an 88,000 acre concession in Namibia hunting my 10-day safari. And the amount of money that these outsiders pay, of both Americans, Germans, Russians, whoever comes into these different areas in Africa, the amount we pay and the animals we shoot, we're basically employing, like at the concession I was at, all those local workers that were there to skin game, to drive us out, to be guides, the ladies that would wash our clothes, the cooks that we were employing, the meat that we had the best cut, and the rest of the meat, they gave them 5 pounds of sack to each employee of, I think they have 42 employees, and the rest they would take to local market. So it's a massive revenue stream that really these other people that are not hunters don't see that. All they see are dead critters and thinking, oh, that's so terrible, and doing this. But we're actually helping the animals themselves as well as some of the local indigenous people, like when we do super exotic hunt, whether that be in Africa, all different parts, or New Zealand, or wherever you're going. So that's something to think about, that, we're not hurting these animals. That's, if anything, we're helping continue the species as we, collectively make sure that, we do the best we can with them and manage them properly.
Yeah, people make decisions based off of emotion. They don't even want to really hear all the facts about what's going on. The media pumps it one way, and it's I don't know. It's just, I just wish more people were educated about it, what's going on. But they see the Bambi movies and Lion King and this and that, and think that that hunters are evil, which is. Hunters are the animal lovers of the world, and PETA and them don't want to hear that, but it's true. So, and we are the ones who are conserving these animals and continuing their lines, so. But anyway, I think we're going to end with that. Carlos, I really do appreciate you being here. A lot of good information, man. I'm going to have to come and see you. I think anybody who bow hunts should give it a shot. Come out and check you guys out. It's just sounds like an awesome operation. I haven't been on that ranch, but if it's anything like the Quattro B, man, it'd be a good time. And I really appreciate you being here, man. What is there any thing you want to plug as far as social media or websites?
If anyone out there listening to us right now wants to actually check out the Lee Ranch, our website is www.leeranchbowhunting.com. We are also on Facebook. If you type in Lee Ranch Bow Hunting, an icon of a guy shooting a bow, that's me. click on that one right there, because actually there's 2 Lee Ranch bow hunting sites on Facebook. Click on the one with myself, the icon of a guy shooting a bow. Click on that, and as you are now my friend, you will see all the updates of what we're doing, what animals we're bringing in, what we're shooting, what's going on, as well as my number. I do all the booking. I'm the main guide. I'm the only guide there, so I manage the range and guide it. So if you have questions, concerns, feel free to call me. My number is 210-836-6892, and I'm more than happy to talk about the ranch, what to expect, when we can get you in, what's going on. And as a hunter myself, I will tell you, if you call me and say, Carlos, I'm in for axes right now, what's going on? Sorry to break your dreams, but right now they're unpatternable. I can't locate them right now. They're the best of what I want to locate them at. Tell you what, sit back, save your cost. I'll keep your number in my phone, and I will call you, and I'll let you know. Or you're a big hog hunter. You want to come down, you want to slaughter. Hey, right now we got too many acorns. Wait till November, December. And then you will have hogs. I mean, last year I had hunters taking rocks in their stands to keep the hogs off them because they were trying to go after exotics. And as we know, when the hogs move in, deer want nothing to do with that. So, they're just different times, different places. But as a hunter myself, as a guide, I will honestly and truly tell you what we have, what we don't have, what's moving, what's not moving. So that way, you're in the best position to have the best time you can, and we'll see where it plays. That's all I like to do.
Yeah, I think that's what separates you from the rest, man. I mean, you're a great guy, and I really enjoyed hunting you with you at the Quattro B, and once again, I really appreciate having you on, and I'll have to get with you here pretty quick, dude. We'll have to check something out. It's getting cold, and I'm starting to get itchy, so once again, thanks again, Carlos.
Okay, talk to you soon.
See you later, bud. Well, I hope y'all enjoyed the conversation with Carlos. Yeah, this guy, he's a cut above your average bow hunting guide. And, I highly recommend that everybody look him up. I'll have all links to a lot of his endeavors along with this episode link at www.theoutsidewithin.squarespace.com. So stay tuned for another episode coming soon.